Welcome, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Ladles and jelly spoons. All right, let's get this microphone close and get this party started. Okay, so I want to start off with this picture, drawing of something I find absolutely amazing. This drawing tells the story. It's what we know. Now, I wish I could verify the source of it, but it's a screenshot that somebody sent out to me from probably another video, so I don't know the source of these. But nevertheless, with the prevarications and things going on, you just have to take it for what it's worth. I think all this emphasis in education, all the emphasis that they do on sourcing is like anything else. It's a bit misleading because according to official sources, some religious zealots with box cutters caused $3 trillion to be spent by the most wealthy nation in the world to bomb the heck out of villagers in one of the poorest nations in the world by mistake, according to official sources with traceable references and such. So you can see why I dispense with that kind of wild goose chase. We take the evidence out there as it's presented and we try to make sense of it on our own because we're going to come up with something much better than the official narrative. I guarantee that it's going to make more sense, if not be understood. What is there to understand? When you're told about what a psychopath does, are you going to seek to understand? It's like those Dateline TV shows where they say, into the mind of a murderer. What possessed this man to slay his family? And yeah, who cares? Is there going to be a good reason? Is there going to be justification or something adequate to make sense of such senseless actions? Well, no. Okay. We're not going to get as much into that, at least not at first. Just look at this. So it says, if you zoom in here a little bit, you can see. It says, the fate which will shortly befall the few remains of ancient carpentry that have yet to escaped the hand of the destroyer. Okay, and so we've had these questions, these old buildings they discover, and I've had this deep curiosity or deep fascination with what is inside of these buildings. You know, what about the furniture? What about these things that belonged to the giants, that belonged to the people from before? What of these things? Well, you can see they burned them. They burned what they could. Most of the buildings that we find are completely intact, like when they claim to have built them. That's the origin of ye olde ladderline, because when they present these structures in photos, drawings, and in real life to the general population of dupes, of fools, plebeians, the riffraff, the hoi polloi. In other words, you and me. That's how they see us. They've wiped out the artwork, the intricate things that are perishable, burnable, the clear evidence of the former civilization, and then the things that they can't get rid of, they just kind of adopt and claim to have built. The free, well, it's free masonry, but they claim to have put the masonry together. So what about free carpentry? Are you a member of the secret society of free carpentry? No, there isn't one. Do you know why? Because that shit burns. And that's what you see going on here. Now, when they refer to the destroyer, who is that? Who is the destroyer? Well, the destroyer of worlds. Is it a reference to Revelation? Perhaps it is. Perhaps it is. I do not know. But it is something I am very much investigating, and I want to get to some answers shortly for that. And we will. So let's just move on. So I wonder. Very interesting, huh? And then the dates they have. Okay, it's everything I've been talking about. Okay, so they're burning what they can. They adopt the free stuff, and then they have the name of the street is New Street. Like, you know, where the streets have no name. The streets had a name, but that name would reveal the old empire, the previous civilization they're trying to hide. And what of that previous civilization they're trying to hide? Well, we have much to find out about them. Much. Now, you'll see on the left they're putting up a rooftop. Is it because they set fire to the place to just kind of destroy as much as they could, you know, expeditiously, and then attempt to destroy the building itself? Now, why would they do that? You wonder. Well, simply to hide the previous civilization and fake history, yes. But also, there were more buildings than there were people. It was obvious that the population had not caught up to the previous levels. That would beg many a question. So they would make entire cities and areas and districts and regions and territories, you know, off limits so that you didn't see these empty cities. And indeed, in populated cities, there are abandoned buildings and ruins. It doesn't make sense. How could there be abandoned buildings and ruins in a somewhat overpopulated or very populated growing city? It doesn't make sense. You know, if you own properties, you want to collect rent money and things like that. You're going to keep it up, and if you can't, it's got a market value, you would sell it so you don't have to pay tax on it. Anyway, they don't build squat. When they show pictures of them building things, they just show them finishing up the roof. And so that's how you end up with, yeah, you guessed it, that's right, ye olde letterling. Also, the dates are significant. 1835, you know, they put it right there. Now that could be the street number, but all right, back in action. Yeah. All right. New Street. So the reset, we believe, happened between 1810 and 1812. So everything seems to be, you know, post like 1812 time frame. bricks, 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 bricks out the wazoo. That is a line, a phrase that I made up to describe the fact that there are more bricks than makes sense, especially for these colonies, these places such as the United States, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. Did boatloads of bricks come over? Do you realize how difficult it would be to sail boats from, like, let's say, England to the United States, the North American colonies, and have them loaded up with bricks? You know, it just doesn't make sense. So we'll cover that topic a little bit more, as well as the advanced technological architecture. And so I can remember distinctly the lessons that I learned from the art historians, the general historians, the pseudo historians of channels like the History Channel and others, where they talk about the brilliance of Michelangelo, for example, and Leonardo da Vinci, and many others. It would seem that they take artwork that is found all over the world from a time period probably not as long ago as the lifetimes of Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, and also artifacts and things from before the time of supposedly, Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, for example. Now they'll do this, they take all this stuff that is found all over the world and they attribute that art to this small group of men who are from like even one particular city of one particular province of one particular country in one particular continent. And they'll say, and I remember this distinctly, that the great genius masters could come up with this stuff in a way that nobody can do today. They are just one-of-a-kind, one-off geniuses. They would look at a big slab of marble brought in by, hard-working, rough and tough men with their socks all darned up with stitches, using oxen and horses. They bring in this 70-ton slab chunk of marble right into Vienna or Rome, wherever. And then Michelangelo, he would go up to it and he would look at it and nobody could talk to him, because he's into his thing and he's going around and he's looking at this stuff and he's feeling the marble and looking around at it and then he can see, Eureka! His eyes flare out wide, and he may look like a very flamboyant gay man who is getting excited about something like fashion or whatever, but it's not that. No, he's pure. He's a pure artist, an artiste. In fact, you have to pronounce that word differently when you're talking about Michelangelo. He is an artiste, and his eyes flare out. He might even go, and he can see David inside of that big slab of rock. And all he does is he knocks out all the superfluous marble and granite and whatnot out of the way. With a hammer and a chisel, he makes it as smooth as glass. Even it has depths, areas where the material is somewhat translucent so that the light pervades inside of the stone and reveals shapes and forms and shading and shadows heretofore not seen. Yet Michelangelo could see it through the marble because he's so familiar with the formation of igneous rock. Yet when these things break, is it a repair that they do to drill a hole right in the middle and put a rod in there and kind of stick it back together? Or is the whole structure made around a wire frame, kind of like a stick figure, with some kind of softened material, a resin, in fact, that turns into what we think of as marble or granite? Did they have that ability? Or what we're seeing, is this some kind of automaton preserved through mineralization or petrification of some kind? Perhaps even a life form that we just don't know about. It's not likely to be that. It's more likely a mass-produced or custom-made form of something akin to 3D printing, and the structural strains and forces on it demand an iron or other type of metal inner structure, frame, support, skeleton, basically. And that's what we're seeing. And all the stuff we were told about it being carved out of a solid monolith is bunk. Like so many other things. So there's this magazine, I guess, and it's irreverent, and it kind of makes fun of things of the time. It's done in the early 1900s, and it's called Puck. Puck with a P. And it's pretty funny. And I think it's like the 1900s version or early 1900s version of the True Third channels on YouTube today. And Puck kind of makes fun of all the nonsense going on and these weirdo kind of pervert guys who are like posing as like ancient Romans or whatever. And then you have all kinds of stuff going on. I don't really want to get into it because it's kind of political at the time, but there's a lot of other stuff. I just want to draw your attention to this magazine, Puck. You'll be seeing more of it in the future. Puck with a P. So we're kind of jumping around here, and I want to talk about this, the narrative about the civilization in the United States of America before the settlers. We're coming up very quickly on Thanksgiving. In fact, Thanksgiving is tomorrow in the United States, and it's a holiday that is completely contrived out of stories and tales about pilgrims that have this kind of variation on these top hats, and they're said to be Puritans, and these Puritans go and purify the land by pushing away the natives and fighting with them and slaughtering them and all that. But it all started with a friendly dinner where these Egypts came, and they didn't even think about how they could feed themselves, and so the Indians came to the rescue and introduced them to corn. Not the band Corn, but to the food corn, also known as maize. Now, I don't know who introduced the Mexicans to it, but if you go to, like, let's say a museum, they're going to have like some exhibit about how the Mexicans made flour tortillas and corn tortillas. And this is history. Like, I think we've all heard this stuff, and it's just garbage. It doesn't tell you anything. It just uses up time and space and energy and bandwidth or whatever, just with this bunk bullcrap. Well, so this, we're told, so the Puritans kind of did the same exact thing that the Spanish settlers did. And so you have your Protestants who come and then just rape the land and fight and kill the natives. And then you have the Catholics doing it mostly in South America, kind of the same thing. So if you want to hate Christians, you can just go to your fake history books and look and find reasons. It's right there for you in black and white. Right? Well, yeah. So, it's like, oh, we need your help. Oh, let's have Thanksgiving, and then we're going to kill you. Oh, you need our help. We're going to give you help, and then we're going to say there are too many of you, and we're going to kill you. And, that's basically it. So, here we're talking about all the way out west. There's a lot of stuff that's way more interesting about the West, the Old West, before the Old West, that I'm really getting into, because they never really addressed it much, and it doesn't make sense. Like the Civil War, North versus South. Well, what about the West? Well, it's not North or South. Well, yeah, it is. There's the Northwest and the Southwest. That's different. The Civil War didn't reach out there. Okay. I only heard one story about somebody saying, screw all this killing each other bullcrap. I'm going out west. Well, I only heard one story about it. And one of the reasons is the West was closed. Closed, not open for business. How that happens, I just don't know. Well, why couldn't people just go out there? Why did Lewis and Clark, why were they the ones that went out there and, oh, we're discovering it. Hey, you over there, I discovered you. You didn't exist till I saw you. Now you exist. It's like the modern version of that is like Wikipedia. You don't exist unless you have a Wikipedia page telling the world that you exist, Hey, I researched and that person doesn't exist. It's like people cite Wikipedia for facts, right? Same type of thing. So out west, there are these things that people find, like stone monuments, mysterious, like stone circles, monoliths, walls, stone walls, evidence of advanced civilizations. Of course, that's everywhere, but it hasn't really been talked about from the Old West. I think they did a pretty good job of destroying a lot of it before they opened the West for business. Their narrative completely falls apart, though. So one of the things they do to explain how things just seemingly appear out of nowhere, such as super long, in fact, transcontinental railways even, perhaps, they say, well, the Mongols built it. The Mongols. Really? So you have this frontier that you've struggled and struggled to reach. Nobody in the world knew it existed until Lewis and Clark are led there by the nose by Pocahontas or whoever. And then they see it, and then it exists because they tell the president. And the president takes a pin and he puts it in the map, and then it exists. All right. So, oh crap, we got to build right away. We got to build all this crap. We have like a few decades, and we're going to have to build entire cities. And we just found out about this crap. We were told about it in a dream, where this beautiful giant woman with kind of symmetrical yet plain features, carrying a sword and perhaps, I don't know, a shield or something else. She comes along in the dream, and she says, manifest destiny. She's like got this flowing white robe. It's kind of like the scene in Ghostbusters where the woman appears over the bed when he's sleeping on his back. She's floating above him, except instead of unzipping his pants with like magic or whatever, she just tells him, manifest destiny. And he hears that, manifest destiny, and immediately he knows, kill all the Native American Indians and forge your way westward until you get to the ocean, and then you get a prize. It's like pulling a lever on a slot machine. And you need to do this. You need to go out there in wagon trains, hooting and hollering. You got to take on a whole new persona when you do it. No matter your background, if you're German, Polish, English, doesn't matter. You just start talking like this, yeehaw, and you get some 6-shooters, and you start just gambling, drinking whiskey, and you shoot them up, and you just got to wrangle and get on horses and hoot and holler and all that stuff, because you are going to invent the Old West, right? Even though it's brand new. And anyway, so they get out there, and there's all this stuff already there, I think. So to explain how it's built, they just kind of start this rumor about the Mongols, who, even though they went through all this crap to come from the east, they slapped their hands on their foreheads. Oh, you know what? From Asia, you can just get on a boat and sail eastward. And you know what happens? You show up in San Francisco or Olympia, Washington, or San Diego, or Long Beach, Los Angeles, or any number of places. And nobody thought of that. But Lewis and Clark, once they got the president to put that on the map, then it became possible. So they did that. And, well, they did it in reverse. So then when they realized, oh man, they figured, well, somebody must have just hopped on a boat and sailed west from the west coast. And they used a globe, and they sat down with their globe and studied it carefully in a classroom. And they saw, if you start off on the west coast of North America and you go westward, you're going to end up in like an Asian place. And everybody knows that Asians like to work for cheap, practically for free. And it's no problem to just sail over there, get off the boat, walk into the country, and declare, you have to speak loudly so they'll understand you. I need a bunch of Mongol workers to build cities and railroads in the Old West, which is new. And so, they tell you, well, you know what? You said Mongols, so you have to go to Mongolia, and it's like really far from this coastland here where you landed. But they help you along and take you there. It's a dangerous and long journey, but thankfully you have ninjas and samurais to protect you along the way. When you finally get there, you have to go up a tall mountain, and on the top of the tall mountain is another tall mountain. You go up that tall mountain. And on top of that tall mountain is a temple palace with a long stairway, because it's a pyramid, and it goes to the top, and there's a wise man up there, a guru. And you go all the way up there. And when you go up there, he issues, 9 challenges for you, and you do all these challenges, and it even includes like a romance and things like that. Anyway, you go through all that. And once you've succeeded in all those things, he awards you with a piece of wisdom, which is like a secret word. And you use that secret word, and you can gather up tons of people. So you gather them all up, and you go back to the coast where your boat is waiting for you, because nobody touched it. You just, put it in a parking garage type thing, like moored it in this special place where nobody will bother it. And you have thousands of men who are just willing to work, even though they don't really know what they're going to get out of it. Whatever. You tell them, they can't stay because the Old West isn't friendly to Mongols, but you can work there. And anyway, they have to now build a bunch of boats so they can get their butts over there too, because they can't all fit on your boat. Heck no. So you wait, and they build all these boats and whatnot, or they buy some of them. And then you have this big caravan of all these boats, and then you're sailing west. I don't know what year it is, like 1830 or something. Along the way, they ask, why didn't anybody think of doing this before? And you just turn and you go, I don't know. It seems kind of obvious, but nobody thought of it. So it's ours because we discovered it. Well, we sent Lewis and Clark, and they saw it, and it's ours now. Nobody knew about it before then. Yeah, there were people living there, but they don't count. So, surprised you guys didn't sail out here and claim it on your own. Whatever. Finders keepers, losers weepers. It's ours, and that's why you're going to work for cheap. You're going to build all this stuff for us, and when you're done, you're going to get your asses back here. Right back where you started. So get ready, because it's all going to start when we land. So they land, and they just pick out areas, where there's no city, and they just envision an entire huge city built of brick, stone, all kinds of different materials, marble, things like that. And so they get to work quarrying stone and making multiple hundreds and millions, billions of bricks. And they build all the cities to get ready for the minor 49ers. Because you tell them, this is now it's maybe 1832 or 1836. And you got to get moving, because you got to finish all this stuff, because in 1849, they're going to discover gold. And sure enough, fast forward, you got the cities all built up, and the cities are empty, so they got to get people there. And somebody gets the people there, because they go out and they go panning for gold and whatnot, and they find gold. And so what do you do when you find gold? Nobody else knows about it. What do you do? Well, I will tell you what the historical record says they did. They went into the city and held it up in the air in one hand, and the guy walked around and he said, "Gold! There's gold in them there hills." And that fervor was whipped up to the point that hundreds of thousands and millions of people came from all over, but mostly, from the east, we think. And they went there to the west, the Old West, which was brand new, and called themselves Miner 49ers. And so where were these gold mines? Well, they were deep in California, hundreds of miles from San Francisco, inland. So where did they go mostly? Well, where do you think? San Francisco. Because what better place to go to mine for gold and pan for gold? What better place to go to than a city hundreds of miles away from any of the places where you pan and mine for gold? And it's all because of one man who just had one little glass vial with some nuggets of gold in it, which couldn't have been fool's gold. Nobody even had to check because of his excitement. His excitement was convincing enough because he walked around saying, "Gold!" telling everybody about it. In the Old West, which was so new that he didn't even think that a bandit might, put on his black hat, and look, first looking in the mirror and seeing that he has, he's not very good looking. His, maybe his hairline is receded and his facial hair doesn't quite make up for it. And that just makes him evil, because that's how you can tell if someone's bad. And so he wears black because he's got to let everyone know how bad he is. But he hasn't done anything bad. He has to go out, and then use his 6-shooter to steal the gold from the person yelling, "I've got gold because there's gold in them there hills, and I want you all to get there first and take it before I can get back and get me some more." It's logical human behavior. There's no reason to question it. So that's the story of the Old West. Yeah. What else happened out in the Old West? Well, this is 1902, and this is, where is that? Yeah, well, this is a forest fire from 1902 out west. This is a real forest fire. This is what a forest fire looks like, and I just thought it was funny how the Library of Congress only had this and maybe 2 or 3 other photographs of any forest fires from the entirety of the 1800s to the early 1900s, all the way up. I think the search I did came up with maybe 14 photographs of anything having to do with forest fires, and the 3rd or 4th photograph was already into the era of Smokey Bear, and it was a photograph of a poster of Smokey Bear blaming you. "You are to blame for forest fires." That's basically what the poster said. Smokey the Bear was blaming you for these fires before they even happened. He knew that you were a bastard and you were causing the forest fires, and he was telling you to stop doing that. Okay, here, a quick note. Laos. Have you ever heard of the country of Laos? Laos? Probably not. Why? Because they don't want you to know about it. Why? Because they haven't destroyed all of the old architecture and artifacts from the previous civilizations. In particular, the previous civilization of antediluvian giants. Yes, because before Noah's flood, I think people were much bigger, and there may have been even super giants, also known as titans. Well, that's ridiculous, UAP. What are you talking about? Well, I'm just talking about the evidence. There's this valley, and in the valley there are these giant pots and bowls, and almost all of them are broken up, but some of them aren't. And anyway, Another country like that is Yemen. You haven't heard anything good about Yemen. And you may have heard that Yemen is the most dangerous place in the world. Like if you would walk through Yemen, they would just riot around you and just beat you to a pulp, because that's how they roll. Now that doesn't seem like it makes sense to me, but I'm not excited about going there and trying to test that out. If anything, if it's true, it's probably because they're made to be that way because of whatever is happening to them that they didn't bring on themselves. It's happening to them. Now, why? Why would there be a country they don't want you to know about? They don't want you to visit. They don't want you to look at. They just want you to be afraid of it and think of it that like you need to bomb it. Well, Yemen is that way, I think, because it has some awesome ancient architecture that they have not yet destroyed. Because they made the mistake of allowing it to be opened too early, and it got populated, and it's very difficult to destroy architecture that's being occupied. If it's buried, when they dig it out, they like to have it be off limits. So all over the world you find these things. Now, some of these things that get unearthed have appearances that are reminiscent of transports, boats, things like that we have today that are made of steel and are very large, except what do we find? Well, theirs are larger, of course, as going along with everything else, but also the metal isn't metal anymore. It's stone, because it's been subject to the minerals, the elements, right? So over time, the metal is replaced by a lot of minerals, but there are traces of the metal still there. It's quite obvious, and you can see the characteristics that become more and more familiar as you study this stuff. What a lot of people don't know is some of these things, if you rap on it with your knuckles, I'm not talking about that genre of music from the 90s mostly, although it's still popular today. It's not for me. I like some of it, but anyway, I'm talking about rapping on it with your knuckles. It rings like a bell, like an oddly shaped, huge, monolithic stone. I mean, I guess it is stone. It just has this characteristic ring of a big chunk of metal. It's quite amazing. It's quite an amazing thing to behold. There's one, I think it's in Jordan, where it rings really, really amazingly bright and long. And it's just this huge stone. And the other stones don't do it, but just this one. And it's in this area, like outside of a city. And the story of that one is the village people somehow moved that huge, heavy stone into the city to the king's palace because he wanted to use it as like a bell, like to bring people together or whatever. Because it was, like I'm telling you, it rings like a bell, even better than like a bell in some ways. But it didn't ring. When you take it away from the spot where it was found, it didn't ring anymore. And so they took it back to that spot where they found it and set it down there, and it rings. To this day, it rings when you tap on it. It's amazing. There are other things like that. A lot of them are in the Middle East. And they're all broken and busted up because it's been under attack for centuries and centuries. But it's not the only place. If you think the United States is exempt from this type of thing, think again. The Civil War is a farcical tale. It happened, it just didn't happen the way it's been presented. they were very protective of the information about the Civil War. I mean, this is decades after the age of photography, and yet we only have one or maybe two photographers who ever photographed the Civil War. There's the official photographer, and then there was one I found who had photos of the South, but those were published in like 1915. They were, quote, found, so many decades later. So I don't know, but like officially, for a long time, there was only one. But yeah, those photos I just mentioned from the South, photos of the Confederacy from the Civil War, that was a state photographer as well, but it was for the Confederate States. And then it was republished in 1915, and then it just wasn't made known until like recently. Like I had never heard of it, but it's in libraries. It's just, there's a lot of stuff in libraries that nobody bothers to even look at or document in any other way, and probably should, because they are actively destroying this stuff. Well, back then, the Civil War, I'm pretty convinced now, is a period of time in which they actively destroyed architecture in what we think of today as, quote, the South. So they were very protective of this information. Now, why would you be that way? Like here, they have these, the photographs of this series were taken directly from nature at considerable cost. So that implies there are photographs in other series that were not taken directly from nature or in the field, or in other words, real. These, though, were at considerable cost. Well, maybe. Warning is therefore given that legal proceedings will be at once instituted against any party, infringing the copyright. Okay, so they're very protective of this information, but why? Did they make a ton of money off of it? No, probably not. But here, the ruins of Mrs. Henry's house, as if you're supposed to know who Mrs. Henry is. Bull Run. Bull something. In this vicinity, the battle raged fiercest. Okay, that's a nebulous statement. And so, okay. And the photo, I don't have it right there. Let's see if I can find it. No, I edited it out. But it's just the house, and it's just smashed. There's like nothing there. It's just wiped out, cleared into the ground practically. All right. Oh. Well, this is from like right next to it. So this one is the bank in that area, I think. And it's kind of the same thing, although there's a lot more standing of this. But what I want you to note is, just like in the ruins of her house was built with masonry and brick. Okay? It was huge too. And then it was wiped out to the ground, like clean to the ground. Now this bank, those pillars are immense. And what do we see? On the right, we see, it looks like stacks like cords of wood, but it's not. Those are bricks. So it helps answer the question, where did the bricks come from? Well, they were already here, and they were built up into the form and shape of beautiful, huge buildings. I mean, look at that building. Is it a window or a door on the second floor, which is about 20 feet high? And the doorway or window itself is a good 12 feet tall, probably more. And in the Civil War, how in the world did this building get smashed to bits and pieces? Like, I can't imagine the scenario. It's not like they had RPGs and shoulder-mounted brick-seeking missiles, you know what I mean? They had cannons, right? Well, cannons, yeah, right. We've looked at that. That's a bunch of BS. But let's say, okay, why do you even need to bother? Like catapults. You have catapults. Do you think they just sat there and just lobbed these huge iron balls via cannon or catapult? Whatever. They say cannons. Fine. They just shot this building, this bank with cannons. Just kept shooting it. They didn't hit any of the pillars, but they hit the bricks and knocked a lot of them down. And then they stack them up because they're going to build something else out of it, right? And what they're going to build out of it, is it going to resemble even remotely the building that was destroyed? Heck no. We're told, well, it's the same people, same stature people, same background, same architectural understandings and things like that. But when they rebuild these structures, they don't build them anything like what was there before. They don't build these huge, like 20-foot high floors and things like that. Heck no. That wouldn't make sense. Well, if it doesn't make sense when they rebuild it, why did it make sense to build it that way in the first place? Does anybody ask these questions? I don't know. I'm asking the questions. Do I have the answers? Well, kind of. We're getting there. So we have skeletons unearthed. This photo was taken before the Smithsonian got there, right? And see, the way things have been, to understand how all this architecture and all these artifacts are hidden and not represented. In the movie Indiana Jones, you have Belloc and Indiana Jones competing for whatever artifact, the Silver Cross of Cortez or whatever, the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, whatever it is. But here's the deal. If Indiana Jones says it belongs in a museum, that means it belongs in the hidden archive of a museum, not on display. Heck no. Fake dinosaurs are on display in the museum. They don't want to display real stuff. It's a propaganda center. It's not a historical museum. And then Belloc, the bad guy, is probably in real life the good guy who is seeking it for his private collection, where the history fakers can't get to it. Or he may sell it on the black means bad, black market, where somebody who wants it can pay money for it and get it and reward Belloc for his efforts. And then that person can put it in his private collection where it can't be destroyed, it can't be stolen away or hidden by somebody who just wants to keep it from everybody else. Well, he's keeping it for himself. Yeah, because he has to. If he says he has it, then, Indiana Jones' boss from the university or whatever, the government, top men, will show up and take it. Because they have people on the case. Who? Top men. Well, who's that? Top men. And it's going to go into Warehouse 13, where they're going to blow it up with a fake nuke. So that pretty well explains the whole thing. So one of the things they did back then to destroy this architecture is the same thing they're doing today, and that is fires. And my, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Why, all this talk about, vanilla skies, the Niller skies, how many photos have we looked at and you can't see the hills behind, you can't see the tall buildings further back, the horizon, whether it makes sense to you or not, the horizon rises to eye level. All right, so depending on the amount of clarity you have, you should at least see some shapes and forms of the structures further back, and they usually have it all white, hence Niller skies. Oh, well, that's the photography they had and blah, 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 except that we look at other photographs where they forget to do the Niller skies, and there are no Niller skies. And it's not an exposure thing, because you can tell, you can see where the masking took place, where they purposely overexposed the photos. Because it's actually a photo of a photo, and you don't get to see the real photo. And if you did, and sometimes we do, it's extremely HD, clear, crisp. And I'm talking 1860s. I'm talking 1850s even, officially. The dates, we don't know for sure. But here, what could burn in a city so intensely, especially back then? Oh, well, it's all wood. They milled it all out of wood. Well, what you see in the foreground, for the most part, is not wood. And even wood doesn't burn always with this white smoke. And we even see these, like, striations, you know. Are they scalar waves? I don't know. Is that sunlight beaming down from above or something else? I don't know. But we see that today as well, even at night. So I found it interesting. So tombs and graves, yes, they're interesting too. But here we have Ye Olde Ladderleen. And electric streetcars, they were in place. It all speaks for itself. But these buildings, they look like semi-occupied. Some of them are very old looking. This is a perfect example. So this is the Hotel de Ville in Paris. The year, it says 1871. And these are the ruins of the hotel. Ruins of the hotel of the valley or village. I don't know. No, it'd be village, right? Because Val is valley. There's a small town in Alsace-Lorraine called Val de Vie. Val de Vie. So, village, valley, valley, village, whatever. But look at the fence. Look at that fence. So it's fenced off. You're not allowed to snoop around there and see what is left from what they tried to burn away. They couldn't burn away. And that fence has been around for a long time. And I saw this in old photos of Columbus, Ohio. I saw this in old photos of Washington, D.C., around these buildings like, you know, like the Capitol building, things, you know, buildings like that that were supposedly being built. But they had to have it fenced off and, you know, privacy, you can't even see in. In modern times, they did that in Italy with the Forum and when they're doing excavations and things. Now, why is it they just don't want you to see? Well, you'll see what was there before. They do it in Seattle with the Big Bertha tunnel, and they hit something, and then they're delayed, and they said, "Oh, it was just a steel pipe that they already knew about." They forgot to call before you dig. That's what happened with the Big Bertha underground highway project, 3 miles of tunneling, the biggest tunneling machine in the world right underneath the city, and it all got stopped up for like 6 weeks over the holidays years ago when they hit something and it stopped the machine in its tracks, and they had to fish around, see what it was, and then there were rumors that it was an underground city complete with a rail system and trains and everything down there, shops and things from some other civilization. Oh, no, it wasn't that. And they said, oh, it was just they're just some drain pipes. And that the city knew about those. They were just like these, like, I don't know, like 9-inch hollow metal, like iron drain pipes. They weren't the wooden ones that they used before, supposedly. The hollowed out logs, drain pipes, ridiculous. Yeah, they forgot to call. Those posters. Call before you dig. The multi-billion-dollar project manager didn't think of that. Call before you dig. Call before you send the biggest tunneling machine in the world tunneling underneath this populated city. Because you might hit a little pipe and just be stopped for 6 weeks or something. Yeah. But all that stuff's off limits. So if you happen to be around that on your vacation or whatever, take a camera and kind of poke it through and just snap a picture and see what you come up with. Send it to me, UAP Channel 2 at gmail.com. That's my email address. So, we have these buried things. I showed you that before. Lots of bricks. Bricks out the wazoo. And this is what I was talking about. So you find these things, I think they were metal. I think this looks like it was a naval vessel or something like that. Could be a building, but it has kind of the look of like a submarine or like a big, like a battleship type thing. So that was probably steel, and then, it's under seawater long enough and pressures and everything. It gets replaced with minerals, and they didn't carve this crap. Just get off of it. If I hear that, I'm just gonna do a PFFFSSSFFFT sound. If I'm on a tour and they say, indigenous inhabitants carved this out over centuries, I'll just go, pff, pff. Hey, if you're a tour guide, a docent or whatever, and you're spewing this crap, you're going to be challenged. So get used to it. Get used to it, because we can think. You look at this, it's like, where'd that tire come from, and why is it all cracked like that? Well, whatever. Man, that thing back there, it kind of looks like maybe an elephant, maybe a camel. Looks like it. Maybe some of the sinews and bone structure and skin and things like that, those types of things, maybe those are arranged according to the dictates of the typical anatomy of such a beast. And if those things do match up, am I crazy to suggest the question, do you think maybe it is the mineralized remains of such a beast? Well, heavens no, it couldn't be, because everybody knows that elephants aren't that big, or camels, they're just not that big. Well, today they're not, but in the past things could have been different. And since we weren't there, we don't know that, do we? So asking the question isn't insane. It's not insanity. To me, insanity is to shut somebody down for merely asking the question, because, let's examine the minerals that are there and trace elements and see if it is similar to the makeup of some kind of biology of some similar creature or beast. And they say, are you saying that that's an elephant? No, I'm not saying it. The elephants we have today, it would be different from that. It just looks like that. But I wouldn't say that it is the same, because you know what? I am smart enough to figure out that elephants of today do not grow to that size. And so it couldn't be that. not exactly that? No, it couldn't be. But it could be something similar. Because I'm able to think a little bit outside of the parameters that are given to us. Can you imagine if you didn't know about apes, if you didn't know about orangutans or gorillas, and then you saw them, it would blow your mind, and you'd be like, what is this? This isn't a cat or a dog or a bear even. I thought bears could look almost like a person when they walked upright, but these things look more like a person. But they're not people, but they look like it. But there's something different. There's something else. There's something new to me, but my knowledge of it doesn't mean that it didn't exist. You know, it's not like the West. That didn't exist until Lewis and Clark found it. So, you know, it's just applying that thinking. And I don't know why it gets blocked. I don't know why so many people listening to this, some people who just showed up to this channel, they don't know anything about me. God knows how they found me, because the YouTube algorithm failed to hide me, though it does a pretty good job and tries very hard. Because I'm insane. I'm absolutely just bonkers, raving. I'm a mad lunatic because I ask these questions and I apply the possibility of the existence of something outside of my present knowledge. And I also allow for the fact that officials may be wrong. They may be lying, although I'm not accusing them of intentionally lying. No, it's not like that. And I've addressed that before. But that's something else that blocks a lot of people. It's like, how could all these people be lying? Well, a lot of people can be fooled, I tell you that. They can be misguided and misled, but very few of them, heck, hardly anybody I've ever met in my whole life is actively pursuing the lie. They're out there, but I don't personally know them. The people I personally know are honest. So that's why I'm talking like we are in this, you know, it's like what we're having is like a little meeting after this class or something that we attend where the teacher kind of went nuts and it's all weird and we're trying to figure it out. Because, you know, we're not like that. Anyway, quarries, a lot of them are just what's left of destroying evidence, in my opinion. It's not so much about quarrying the stone as it is just wrecking the remains, the ruins, the evidence. So again, yeah, you know, you have these things. See the bubbles on the inside? So is it cast? I don't know. Probably something like that. So here I want to point out these antenna-like structures on the right. All the lights on top of the walls, how were they powered? Well, you have two towers. Tower of Power, power towers. The two towers. You know? So can we do it today? Could I erect two towers and put up a whole bunch of lights and power them from the atmospheric energy or whatever? Probably not. But I'm not claiming to know everything that they knew. I'm only claiming to believe or allow for the possibility that they knew in the past things we don't know today and had perfected some technologies that allowed them to light up their own architecture. And look at all the bricks. I mean, there are just bricks everywhere. And then the flood, like flooded in stuff. And then how pristine, like some of the things are for all the destruction. They just walked into these cities. They looked maybe like this when they walk in. What the heck happened here? Well, we don't know, but it wasn't that great. Looks like the buildings like kind of melted to the right. You see that? I'll see what we can do to zoom in on it, but maybe that's water. I don't know. We do have the Niller skies and such. So, yeah, this is more fake history. This is an Antarctic expedition, and what struck me were just how weird some of these people look. They're just like pictures and drawings of people. It's kind of a awkward thing. Yeah, those, maybe it's just the photographic artifacts or whatever, but these striations and things seemed a little weird. And there's that white smoke. Now these are stone cog wheels. Now if you think they carved that out of stone, I would recommend you watch the Wise Up channel and take it to heart, because he will verbally abuse you for thinking that way, and you deserve it because it's stupid. There's no sense in carving this crap out of stone. That's insanity, nonsense, bullcrap, bunk, poppycock, balderdash, and more. It's obviously it was something else. It could have been wood, but it was more likely some kind of metal or some other alloy. You can see where the like the holes are for the axle, and then like the subsequent axles of how they fit together like clockwork. It all went together like clockwork. This is destruction. This is devastation you're looking at. And it gets further destroyed. It's treated like trash. They lie about it, misrepresent it. There's no sense in indigenous people carving this stuff out of stone. Well, we're told they just sat around and knocked together bones and stones, chiseling and carving all day long. If they had any societal civilization, it was all centered around stone carving, like the stone carvers on Meth Club, you know. Here we have, this is a screenshot or something from a movie, The Flintstones. I think it was 1993. And the bad guy in the movie gets covered in concrete, and they had just invented concrete. You know, Fred Flintstone and them invented concrete at the end of the movie, and it's like, oh, this is going to be revolutionary. Well, I've been looking into the age of concrete. When did concrete begin? When did they start using concrete? And they tell us, I think it was crazy. It was like 1870 something is when like concrete officially started getting used. But if you look around, it's kind of nebulous. It's like, well, there are these examples of something that's very close to concrete, blah, blah, blah. They made a slurry, and then somehow it accidentally, magically worked like concrete, but they didn't know how they did it, and it's just a one-off thing. And you start looking for these one-off things, and you find them all over the place. And the Parthenon looks like it's made out of concrete. There are many examples of buildings that are very old where clearly they were made out of concrete. Well, if they had that, why did they use bricks so much and whatnot? Well, why do we do it today? So one other thing I want to note about this guy is that he's looking up, you know, like a flood water's coming. Of course, it's the concrete. But we see things like that, and in fact, I think this pose almost exactly matches the pose of one of these ancient structures, monuments, or supposedly natural formations that just happens to look exactly like a gigantic human being, aka Titan, or a huge giant that is somewhere between the size of like typical normal giants, you know, of like the previous civilizations, and the Titans, somewhere in between there. You know, there's all, you've got the Titans, you've got us, we're the littlest people, pretty much the littlest, and then you have, going in the past, they tell you people were of smaller stature, and it's not at all true, it's the opposite. You don't even have to go back a couple hundred years, and you have people who are 8, 10 12 feet tall even. And the architecture supports that. Almost all of the architecture was for people who are, at least 8 feet tall. Probably a lot more in many, many cases. The antediluvian stuff is, 22 to 36 foot tall people at the highest. I think some of the oldest stuff, in ancient Babylon, Baalbek, look at that stuff, and those people were probably taller than 36 feet. To use those steps and to build with those blocks, you would almost have to be. Obviously, you can build with things heavier than you can lift, but it makes sense. The bricks and the stone blocks, cinder blocks, and things that you build with, you're not going to choose to build out of these things that a strong man can't even lift. If the average strong man can lift a brick or a cinder block, it makes a lot more sense. Do you want them smaller than that, like Lego size? No, because then it's too many different ones to put together. The block or brick should be about the size of what today is a brick or a cinder block or whatever in between. So anyway, yeah, I am not kidding when I'm talking about these things under the water. Now, this looks more ancient, but we've seen these even in more modern times at one of the at the Chicago Exposition. They had boats kind of like this that were electric. They took a charge. They were what I call the Tesla boats. The Tesla boats are they would run for like 8 hours on a single charge, and they would quick charge up. Maybe it took up to 2 hours to charge up, and then they'd run for 8 hours. And that was 1893. And we don't have that today. Have you ever been on a boat that's electric and that runs for 8 hours? I bet you it does exist today, but it's a fact it existed in 1893. And then this looks a lot like it, and it's under 100 feet of rock, and it's just infused in with the minerals. It's obviously a catastrophe. This crap didn't come out of a volcano. It didn't take millions of years. Just cut all that crap out. If you're afraid of believing in anything that resembles the biblical narrative, you're going to be sorely disappointed in living in a fantasy world. You'll become the very thing of that which I am accused by my detractors. Although my detractors are, they're fly-by-night detractors. Because I know how it is. I would be that way too. At first, I'd be like, UAP, who is this crazy nut? What the heck is he saying? It would bother me, and I would be kind of angry, and then I'd watch the video in an angry rage to point out the bull crap and put it to rest, But it just doesn't happen. Well, part of it is that Google and YouTube seem not to feature me or those like myself. This looks like children's art. Suspect, so I don't buy it. This represents the history that we're given today. You get into the nitty-gritty and the orchestration, the mechanisms of making sense of all of it, how it fits together, and what picture or what song does it, how do all these individual parts come together? Well, they don't. It's a mess, and it's bullcrap, and it may look like this looks like sheet music, but it is not sheet music. They have the pianissimo and piano and mezzo piano, mezzo forte, whatever, and then they have forte, double, and then they have fortissimo, and then they have fortissimo, and you really can't go beyond that, but they have fortissimo, and they have fortissimo, fortissimo, and then they have fortissimo. And they have notes going backwards and all kinds of crazy stuff. Very comic. But that's what it is, like the official historical narrative, just like the science of fake space. It's comic. It's comic. How did we ever buy this stuff? Look at this wheelbarrow in the bottom left. So you have a hand cart, you know, and somebody there, and they built all the, you know, look at the brick wall behind and all this stuff. And it's all buried under cultural layers because for centuries, thousands of years, maybe millions of years, they allowed it to accumulate, you know, dust in the wind, you know. Nobody swept with a broom through town. Here, oh, they could say it's war ravaged and whatnot, but what did they have? Aerial bombing raids in what year is this? This is Paris, 1871. I wonder if this is when they had that attack. There was one thing that escaped the censors, and it was in the museum. I don't know if it was the Orleans Museum. But anyway, it said they defended the city from airship attack using their electrical fasces. And that was, I think, around 1870, something like that. So I find that very interesting. There are actually trees here, so that's unusual. More of these guys. Big wide streets went for the horse cart. Look at that building. You could have hundreds or maybe thousands of people in that building, but it's not. It's mostly empty. And then for these high-speed runaway horses or whatever, they have these balustrades sticking up. And then everything's covered still with like dirt and stuff. And then, oh, and then the utility poles. As far back as photography goes, pretty much you can find utility poles. Look how high they are. And then they have, it's supposedly telegraph wires and lights, and they're only halfway up the pole. Why would you build the pole that high then? Why? Doesn't make sense. I'm surprised they don't have a streetcar here, electric streetcar, because usually they do. Maybe they dug it up, or maybe they just haven't like quite uncovered it yet. I don't know. I think that was Russia or something. Règne d'abondance. Interior, you know, like you don't get to see this. Is this the one? There are some of them where it looks like almost like melted rock, melted stone and stuff. But bricks don't really melt that easily. Stone, especially, too. Yeah. Notre Dame. But look at it. It's fenced off. There's all this debris around it. What's going on? Did they just discover it? Or are they like cleaning it up for opening it to the public? You know, they say they built them over centuries. So by the time the third generation comes around, it's being built, off limits the whole time. Nobody's going to question it. And then out in the country and different places, you find these things. It's like, holy smokes, that is perfect art. And it's these big people, and this is the previous civilization. I think these may be remnants of the missing 1,000 years, what we think of as the Middle Ages. It's something that is really presented in an opposite way of what I think actually took place. It was not a time of dark ages of ignorance, superstition, and cruelty. Man versus man. No, it wasn't like that. From the artwork, from the physical from the physical hard evidence like this that we see, that may be from that time, no matter what they say, if it seems to be like it could have come from that time. These are people who were very religious, like Christians, very happy, very peaceful. They were giant. They were bigger than us. They were beautiful, and they didn't seem to have problems of war and strife and all these things. So it seems like it could be Christ's millennial reign. It could be from then. It could be that we are in the post-trib times. Now, I'm not saying that we are. I'm relating the fact that I'm considering the possibility and certainly enthusiastically investigating it. So there will be more to come on that matter for sure. Bricks out the wazoo. I mean, heck, 20-foot thick brick walls, no problem. 30 feet deep, 20-foot thick brick walls, no problem. We got bricks out the wazoo. And then the fence, see the fence up there where they block it off? It's so common. You're not allowed to see. You're not allowed to see the truth. Oh, here's the picture of Mrs. Bradford's house, or whatever it was, from earlier. There's like nothing left of her house. Whoever built her house built one heck of a chimney, fireplace, hearth, foundation, whatever that is. What kind of Civil War battle can you envision that would devastate a home to that degree? I can't imagine it. Why are there no trees around except this one, where the trunk is getting smaller before it gets bigger? Trees don't grow that way. So how did that happen? Was it chipped away and shaved off by a multitude of cannonballs and musket balls? And none of them actually hit it square, knocking it to pieces? The pieces of trees that we see are cut with a saw, it looks like. And there's wood all over the place. So if you say it was a fire, I'm going to say no, because the wood would be burnt. Wood. The wood. So what smashed all up? Oh, cannonballs. Well, they went around and I'm surprised these guys aren't all holding onto their backs like in pain, because they had to bend over and pick up hundreds of cannonballs that got shot into this poor lady's house because of the Civil War. That makes sense, right? Jeez. Yeah, this place. But they're saving up those bricks. If that's what those are, it's hard to see from here. But I think they're bricks. And you go back, like, what is that? Like a tent? Like arched wire. And those columns, are they Doric, Ionic, or Corinthian? I think they're Ionic. So for the Old South before the Civil War, does it make sense to build something that high? This is supposed to be a bank, I think. Where's the vault? They have a chimney. Okay. Whatever. Look at this. You think that's carved? Think again. So, all right, it's becoming a little repetitive, or at least not repetitive. I'm just getting tired. Oh, okay, I told you about this. Fire. Destroyed by fire. Here's one of the other photos that I found. So this is circa 1920. They don't even know. Yeah. Was this carved? Heck no, it's not carved out of the stone. Sometimes they can really fool you because they come along later and carve some of it. But usually, that's like good artwork. That's not like when it's carved more recently, it's kind of like, it's like asynchronous quality work, Really talented artists don't typically do that. Yeah, so they're destroying this stuff today. You wonder, like, why is there continual fighting in the Middle East? Like, why can't they just, Who wants to fight in war and battle? They don't. They don't want to fight in war and battle. The people who do, why do they do it? Oh, they make money, da 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 da. They don't need money. As crazy as it sounds, the thing that makes the most sense to me at this time is that the wars are a cover for the active destruction of the past, the history, which isn't as long ago as you're led to believe, and it's considered very dangerous to their vision for what you are supposed to think, what you're supposed to know or believe. Yeah, they destroy this stuff. Why would they do that? Why would they destroy it? Well, because it goes against their control structure. So I think that's why I'm on this thing of us being post-tribulation, you know, that Christ's millennial reign, if it already happened, then we would truly be in the last days, right? Where the devil is released for a time. He certainly is. Seems to be released upon the world to deceive the world, fake space, fake history, to deceive the world and gather together for himself an army to do once and for all a final battle against God and his people. And the battle would take place at Armageddon. And we'll look at Armageddon because it's an actual place. It doesn't look, I can tell you right now, Armageddon does not look like a place worth fighting for. It's just like a desert wasteland. But it also makes me wonder if a battle hasn't already taken place there and devastated it. Repeat after me. Only you can be at fault for forest fires that burn homes and not forests. Smokey the Bear. Your government propaganda. What is this stuff? Well, you tell me. I've looked at a lot of maps and I've seen this sea. It looked like a tree in some of the maps, but some kind of caldera-like tree stump or inland elevated sea. Maybe they used locks and got boats up to that sea and went across, and they may have had that as well in North America, and then through their devious and destructive ways they broke open the dam and had like a localized flood and wiped out a lot of architecture and such that way. I wouldn't put it past them, and it could be the reason that they're building so many dams and things today. I wouldn't trust the government to build a dam anywhere where they could purposely blow it up and flood you. I just wouldn't trust them. I mean, look at Katrina. It's not worth it. It's too dangerous, man. I just cringe when I read some of the things they write, like Negroid lines. I mean, come on. What the? So, but anyway, what I wanted to point out, if you haven't noticed already, is there are a couple extra continents there, folks. Remember I said there's the black hole of nonsense in pre-Columbian history as to the nature and information about the Atlantic Ocean. In fact, they don't even refer to it as the Atlantic Ocean. They referred to it as the Dark Sea, blah, blah, blah. But look at the size of the continent of Atlantis, and if it were sunken down and gone, that would explain a lot of stuff. It would explain a whole heck of a lot. And then look over there, you see what is now like Hawaii and such, there's this continent of Mu, M-U, right? And if you look, the outline of that is also kind of evident under the water. So was this a map of the world before the flood, the Great Flood, the deluge? I don't know about that. Probably after the flood. But entire continents, that was not on my radar screen until recently, and it's very fascinating, and we'll look into it more. And I did know that for some reason the area southeast of Hawaii is off limits to the people of the world like you and me. It's off limits. Now, supposedly there's nothing there, but why would it be off limits? Oh, it's too dangerous. You'd hurt yourself out there. Well, maybe, but we should still have the right in international waters to sail around there. Why don't we? There are no shipping lanes. Well, why not? It would make sense that there'd be shipping lanes there. They don't do that. They go around. Oh, well, that's back to the shape of the earth thing. So anyway, stone walls all over. Rebel Without a Pause did a great video about that, and he said that he thought that they were not making sense, because if you take a highly skilled worker who specializes in fixing and repairing these stone walls, if you have a section where some drunken idiot drove his overlander through your stone wall at 45 miles per hour and busted down the section, all the stones are there, all of them are intact, maybe one's broken in two pieces, whatever. Can you put Humpty Dumpty back together again? No, it's not that easy. You can't. So what do? Well, you hire this expert, and he's going to put it together in a way that works. You're probably going to need some extra stones or have some left over, because he's not a god. You know, he can't put it back exactly the way that it was, but he can do a better job than anybody else. So you hire him, and just this section pictured right here, he wouldn't necessarily possibly be able to do that much in a single day, and you'd be lucky if he could, and he would be exhausted after that, and you'd have to pay him hundreds of dollars just for that. And you'd be lucky to find somebody who could even agree to that. Now that's just this one section, and that's with the stones all already there. Whoever built these things originally didn't have that to go on. They had to do it from scratch. Some of these stones are extremely heavy and couldn't even possibly be lifted by the world's strongest power lifter. So what equipment did they use? Well, we don't know that either. Well, they just picked up these stones from the area that were left by the glaciers, and they just piled them up there so they could farm, and they didn't strike their foot against there when they're walking around tending to their sheep. They had nothing better to do. Well, that makes a lot of sense, but the amount of time it would take to assemble these walls that are all over the old countries, including the United States, including the West. Why do I say that? Well, I think this is the Berkeley. This is near Berkeley. And there are miles and miles of this stone wall. And it was supposedly built by the indigenous people, the Native Americans, a.k.a. Indians, a.k.a. Injuns, if you will. Yeah, I don't think, and that when they were consulted by this university professor, they said that they had no idea. These were always there, as far as they're concerned. They were there before they came. How long had they been there? Well, that's always nebulous, too. They say many moons, centuries perhaps. Or definitely a few centuries, but beyond that they didn't know. I thought that was a fascinating tapestry. Here again with the lions and stuff, it gets into Revelation and the prophecies and tribulation, post-tribulation times. Very fascinating. Mudflood, enough said. I hear people say mudflood, what mudflood, etc., etc. Oh, come on. So, yeah. So I just want to mention this real quick, and then I'm going to stop because I'm getting tired. This building is gone. I'm pretty sure it's gone. There are many buildings like this they come up in these drawings, and you can tell these types of drawings. I think a lot of times these are drawings like when you are in an art class and they send you out into the city and they say, pick a building, draw a sketch of it the best you can in a couple hours, bring it into class, color it, and take notes so you can color it properly, bring it into class, color it the next day, turn it in for your assignment. I think this is like one of those where a very talented artist does the best he can, or she, to depict the building true to its form, true to its natural setting state at that moment. And these buildings are not part of the historical record. They were torn down before the age of photography, yet we can go back and look at them, and they have all the hallmark design things that we have come to find strange and unique in the past that we don't make today. And the fact that they're not here kind of goes along with the fact that these buildings are of a greater, more significantly higher level of excellence of architecture that is a step above in size and scope and scale and craftsmanship and artistry and everything that they don't want you to know about, that they're willing to destroy just to hide the truth from you, because the truth is very powerful. And that's what we're getting to the bottom of here. Big, wide, empty streets. These ruins all over. These people didn't build that. Those are ruins. Those are so old. Would they, if their ancestors had the ability, given less technology, to build that, do you think they would allow their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and so on, you think they would allow them to neglect it to this point? No. No. Not by any stretch of the imagination. And what is going on in this picture? Is this market day, or is this bring in the new cult, recruit orphans to set up a new society in this old, abandoned, derelict, devastated, previous civilization wasteland? Well, I think the latter is the answer. They throw blocks in rivers, we know that. Yes, yes. The artwork, the depictions are so majestic, very beautiful. Oh yeah, here's like the Berkeley stone wall I told you about. Look at that. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. And it doesn't serve a purpose. It doesn't do anything to prevent sheep, cows, whatever, jumping over it, no problem. It's like, doesn't stop people. It would it'll stop toy dogs. So if they herded toy dogs, toy breeds, it would make sense then. But we don't see those little shits all over, so we don't think it's that either. What is it? I don't know, but it's something. So okay, I'm going to stop it here. There's more, but that will be for another time. I'm going to do the electric light architecture. Maybe you thought I was going to say the electric light orchestra, but I'm not. Oh, since I talked about bricks, I'm going to play this real quick. Yeah, them shits don't work. So the government offered council subsidies to build flats more than 4 stories high. So these perfectly fine buildings that are so well built you can barely even knock them down with multiple strikes of a wrecking ball, they needed to go because the council decided that it would only give money to build new buildings that are, well, what's different about them? Are they better buildings? No, but they are more than 4 stories high. Well, were the buildings that were 4 stories high not as tall as the buildings they're going to build? No, they were actually taller, but they were fewer stories for the same height. Oh. Are they going to be better in any way? No, they'll just have more floors. Well, could we add more floors to the existing buildings? Well, sometimes that's allowed, but they're not allowing it that time. They need to be knocked down because we need the bricks because we can't make them as well. So there's something else I want to show you. So all this stuff we can cover next time. The electric light architecture for next time, okay? Don't miss it. It's going to be shorter, but every bit as good as this video.